Right then, another big customer build, another Audi A3 BKD. This time, this is a Quattro. So the last one that we did, similar sort of power, 358 this is done, and 470 foot-pound of torque or thereabouts. So pretty good numbers really, and got power all the way to the top, which is good, which I'll put that down because it's freezing. So yeah, everybody was saying on last video it'd be nice with Quattro. Well, this has got it, and you can definitely tell it makes a fair difference. It's really nice to drive, which we'll try and we'll get a video out and about in a minute. So the figures, really happy with what it did, and as you'll see when we're driving it, the smoke output is really good as well. It's obviously being a PD, it's hard to get them completely smoke free and still have power and torque and decent turbo spool and everything. So we have managed to do a decent job on this one. Really happy with it. So the spec of the car, as you can see, it just got some old, they've been on a while coilovers, S3 brakes, full S3 sort of externals, which I think if it had a lot less power than this would be I don't like replicas, so to speak, but this don't look too bad. And this car, it was really, the guy who owned it before, we tuned it to, I think it was 300 horsepower, this was 6 or 7 years ago, and it were absolutely immaculate then. It was his baby, which is a little bit rougher now. It's done a few miles since, but it's not a shed by any stretch. I think bumper wants a little bit of work and a couple of little bits, but at least it's got the brakes and suspension. Interior wise, looks like Mark 6 Golf GTD stuff or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, because normally they've got GTD on them, and so I'm not 100% sure what it is, but everything else is S3. All looks nice and tidy. And then engine bay. So again, we've been a PD engine, there's not really much to see under bonnets usually on them, but this one's not too bad. So it's got all our upgrades. We ended up putting a big MAF delete pipe on this one. This is sort of one-off for this car, but it's just a piece of 80mm pipe if anybody else wanted one. It's got 120% injectors, GTD 28 turbo, running our tubular manifold, 3-inch downpipe, a 3-inch exhaust that we made. I think we made one years ago when we did. Then the motor is fully built, so we've ported the head. Still on the standard cams, because the BKD cams that we've tried in the past never seem to work too well, and if you can get that sort of power with the standard cams, then we're happy to leave them. It's got H-beam rods, machined and coated pistons, balanced crankshaft, so when we've had the engine apart, we've skimmed the head's brand new, but we've skimmed the block. Everything we could possibly do. We've got ARP studs on the crank, our own head studs, pretty much everything that we do for this, we've done it. And then the cooling system, we've put an electric water pump on there, which works on all our cars. Then we've put an upgraded radiator, aluminium radiator, upgraded S3 intercooler, so it's got the aluminium end tanks, and then that goes to our boost pipes, to our EGR delete, to a newly cleaned inlet manifold. So I think that's pretty much the engine covered. I'm sure I missed something, but there's a full spec list in the description anyway, everything that it's got. Got the water injection, which if you looked at the graph before, because this is not really fuel limited, we're not pushing the 120s all the way to the top. We're sort of in that sort of happy medium where we've got just enough fuel and just enough air. Anymore, we're just going to make it smoke. It didn't actually make much difference to power, but that will help cylinder pressures a little bit, which we'll be able to quantify that when we get the cylinder pressure monitoring set up. And it'll keep the EGTs a little bit lower, which on this we've not got any monitoring, but we've monitored it when we had it on dyno, and they're getting hot, but for the use this is going to get, it'll be absolutely fine. With this sort of power, this engine might not really be the best on track, You probably want to turn it down a little bit. What else I forgot? I've just got AEM filter, which that's fairly fresh. The gearbox mods, they're pretty much all internal stuff we've just done. The diff, quafe diff, strengthened the forks, new seals and all that stuff, and built it all up. So it being Quattro, it's a little bit more work. Obviously, if you need to swap things. This has got a single mass flywheel in there, so it's a little bit noisy, a little bit drony. The main thing with the Quattros and the single mass flywheel, you just get a bit of resonance just where you don't want it, which is a bit annoying. But if you put a dual mass in this and we're launching it like you can, you'd break it very quickly. So it's the price you've got to pay. So I think that's pretty much it. The Quattro system, everything sort of from the gearbox back, that's all totally standard. We just service them to make sure that they're behaving properly, make sure there's no play in the rear diff and stuff, because they can fail. But other than that, it's all pretty standard, and they take some decent power. So I think we could talk all day about it, but if you want to look at what we put into some of those other builds, if you look into the borer and all that we've done a video on, and RB and all that, you see we do a lot of similar stuff to them, because we've got a recipe that seems to work. So watch those videos as well. We'll go out, we'll have a drive, see how it behaves. So managed to get out in Kyle's A3. So I've had this car a little while. He works offshore, I believe, so these sort of people normally leave the cars with us between stints, so we normally get to keep them for a while. So it's had a lot of money spent on it, but we'll see how it drives, see if it's worth the money that's been spent. Right now I'm cruising, got the usual Quattro grumble, just where you don't want it, but you cruise at 50 mile an hour, 5th gear, no problem. GTD 28 turbos, not too big to handle, cruising along, making 5 psi a boost. 6th gear, 50, still making 5 psi, just tickle it, make a little bit more boost. Bloody Quattros are horrible for the resonance, especially when you put a single mass flywheel in. It's the only sort of negative this car's got, in my opinion. But drives really, really well. So easy, so comfortable, so smooth. No smoke out the back, hopefully that camera picks it up. Even if you get it a little bit, it's not bad. So, 3rd gear, 3000 RPM, hit it. So out the back, it's got one of the lightest of razors. Absolutely no really coming out. That's like perfect tuned diesel smoke output. Absolutely perfect. Couldn't ask for better smoke output, to be honest. Really happy with that. This is like up there with some of the faster cars we've done. 360 horsepower. 475 foot-pound of torque. It's plenty for a daily driver. So 2nd gear, 3 grand. So we're running like 40 psi a boost. That's plenty to keep this nice and clean. Could run a little bit more if we wanted to, but these turbos always seem happy at that sort of boost pressure. This is if I weren't running about in common rail engine cars, this is the engine, the shorter ratio Quattro gearbox, 28, 120% electric water pump. This is what I'd have.